Excited to invite panelists up here today to speak about strategies for effective parenting of children living with sickle cell disease. So first I'll introduce Mary. Maybe the panel can just come up here and then I'll introduce you guys as you make your way up here. You can sit up here with me. I feel like all four of you should be up here together, right? We're a panel, guys. So first is Mary Oduwole. Where are you, Mary? You're right there, come up here. So all the bios are in the book, so I'll just pull out highlights. Mary's a devoted mother to two remarkable children. She holds a personal stake in sickle cell disease due to a family member's battle with the condition. Her fervent interest lies in advancing the SCAGO mission, aiming to broaden awareness of sickle cell disease across Ontario and beyond. She is a member of the Patient Awareness and the Patient Advisory and Advocacy Council. Tanya Elese. She's a part of the Southeastern Ontario, she is the Southeastern Ontario coordinator for SCAGO. She excels as a human resources and project manager, professional with the Library of Parliament, and she holds a master's in project management. She passionately serves the sickle cell disease community through various roles at SCAGO. And she supports us with French translation services. And she also is a member of the Patient Advisory and Advocacy Council. Next is Bethany. I didn't see you arrive. There you are, girl. So Bethany is a patient advocate born in Toronto in 1992, diagnosed with sickle cell anemia as a baby. She lived in Toronto until she was about 10 years old. She moved to Brampton with her family and continued on with school and work. In her free time, she enjoys listening to music, reading, and staying connected to family and friends. And Dr. Sandra Newton. There you are. So she is a psychology clinician, and she's got a Master's of Arts and a PhD in psychology. At SCAGO, she facilitates workshops and peer support group sessions to support research initiatives. Vaccination acceptance within the sickle cell disease Black community is one example with the Public Health Agency of Canada, and she provides supportive counseling to clients. Dr. Newton, thank you. So I'm going to step away now, and I'm going to invite Mary, or who's speaking first? Mary, is it you?
I don't know whose slide is next. Let's see. Let's go to the next slide.
Who does next slide? About me. Does that feel like you, Brittany? Come in.
Oh, that's me. Okay.
We know what we're doing.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Hi, my name is Mary Oduwole. So about me, I have two children. One is 7 years old and one is 9 years old. So in our house, we speak primarily English, but also a little bit of French, and my children are bilingual. My youngest was diagnosed with sickle cell disease during newborn screening. So when she was about 3 months old, we found out that she had sickle cell disease. We live in Toronto, and we have access to the Sick Kids Care Team since diagnosis. So I'm divorced, and as a single mom, I have a heavy emphasis on preventative health care. So based on that, we started hydroxyurea last year, and I would say that my parenting style is affected by my background in science, and so I'm really skeptical of non-scientific medical claims. So I'm looking for documented evidence. I'm looking for, healthcare practitioners endorsing the treatments that I use to help me with parenting and with my child's care. Okay, so effective parenting for families affected by sickle cell anemia. So foundationally, parenting is still parenting, right? And so at its base, the good tenets of good parenting apply to parenting a sickle cell disease child. There's no exact right way or wrong way to parent, but it does help to hear additional perspectives, right? So engaging in lifelong discovery is important to learn about your own strengths as a parent and the strengths of your child has as well. It's important to also lean on your village and increase your own personal distress tolerance using techniques like TIP, which is temperature, intense exercise, paced breathing, and progressive muscle relaxation to help you remain calm and centered. And so a dysregulated adult cannot help regulate a dysregulated child. So it's important for you to find your center and remain calm so that you are a resource for your child emotionally. You're going to also engage in positive self-talk and affirmations so that you can present your best self as a parent. So for me, because my background is in science, I like to lean on my rational mind. So the mind that looks at past experiences, logic, research, statistics, crunching numbers, mathematics. But because I realize that you're going to be an advocate for your child, and we live in a world with human beings. So, being able to focus on the emotional mind is also important. Feelings, anger, anxiety, sadness. And where at least I've found in the past, the most amount of effectiveness is when you combine the two in terms of your own decision making. And what I like to call is like inner wisdom. So, foundations of good parenting. What you do matters. You cannot be too loving, and it's important to parent with compassion. Right? Be involved with your young child's life. This may tend to change as the child grows and becomes an adolescence where, as a mother, I've personally experienced this where it's a real interesting dynamic because it's really one of the only relationships that you have increasing separation from somebody. When they're in your womb, there's no separation between you and them. You are them. They are you, And then soon, when they're born, they're in your arms, and then they're at your side, and then they're, off playing, and then they're off to college. So this idea of this relationship is really dynamic and interesting in terms of human studies of how this kind of relationship appears over life. So it's just important to keep that in mind. Establishing rules and establishing boundaries and offering explanations for decisions as well. Fostering your child's independence, continuing to be consistent, avoiding harsh discipline, and treating your child with respect. So in addition to that, there are principles of parenting styles, whether you're permissive, whether you can be authoritative, authoritarian, that you can continue to explore what suits you. So what's important to focus on also is additional considerations for parenting a child with sickle cell disease. Oh, I'm behind. Sorry about that. Okay, so you're going to communicate openly and actively listen. Name and acknowledge feelings. I've also found establishing routines and a schedule really effective. Establishing limits and expectations using appropriate and consistent discipline. And promoting treatment adherence. So when we have a certain set time for delivering medicine, we go about doing it the same way at the same time each day, really making it part of our normal life. So it's not anything that is odd. It's just part of our regular routines, and the adherence to it is higher because it's based in a routine. Also, avoiding any power struggles. So I know I found this, and I know a lot of parents find this in general, not just with sickle cell disease, but the idea of keeping the child hydrated. 5 minutes. Okay, taking care of yourself and helping your child to cope. Also, one thing that's really important is mental health support is extremely important. So one of the things I like to do is I like to parent with a lot of just in case. So I keep a list of handy emergency numbers, instructions. I plan outings and vacations more meticulously. I also keep an overnight bag in case we need to go to the hospital at the drop of a dime, and I keep a number of things in that bag for that exact purpose, like something like a sleeveless shirt that's easy and comfortable to put on with the buttons, so if in case we need to use an IV, that there's considerations for clothing that make that sort of thing more easy. I use Crocs when we're in the hospital because they can be easily washed and they're comfortable. I keep with me a thermometer, an O2 saturation monitor as well, so in case the nursing staff is busy, I can monitor my child and advocate in the case that there's something going on that needs additional attention. Keep a hydration bottle, keep snacks, paper and pen, photocopy of the health card, personal care items. All of these things are good, always packed and in the closet. Okay, so what are the key actions that some parents can focus on, right? Parenting is all about knowing and anticipating the needs of your child. So finding the correct balance is always really important. And as the child grows, some of these needs and emphasis are also going to change, right? And so the way in which everybody's going to parent is going to be slightly different. And you're going to tailor your parenting to the child's cognitive, developmental, emotional, and physical needs. Okay, so knowing pain signals is important for every stage that your child is at. And so that may look a little bit different whether the child is an infant, a toddler, school age, or a teenager. So getting to know what some of the pain signals are important in case you need to get additional help quickly. Okay, so what are you focusing on when you are newly diagnosed? So for the most part, you're planning and preparing. It's important to educate yourself on sickle cell topics, dealing with the news, perhaps denial, like I was. You're going to also be forming a care team and a care plan. So creating a structured environment and establishing routines that promote wellness, and you're going to be ensuring that your child is comfortable with getting examined. One thing you're also going to be doing is examining your own preconceived notions about what you're bringing to parenting, such as like a distrust of the medical establishment and thoughts that medicine and treatments are things that should be avoided. You're also going to be training substitute caregivers for how to provide support for this child and support to you as well. Okay, so you're also learning when to seek additional help. So for fever, for the chest crisis, severe headaches, you're also going to be learning how to do the splenomegaly check. So that's that little check mark that you're going to check and see if there's an inflammation in the abdomen, weakness, slurred speech, as the child's getting older, maybe priapism. So you're going to be doing a lot of learning about these things when you first get diagnosed. In the middle years, some of the things you're going to be focusing on are managing sickle cell disease and in education. You're teaching your child the basics about the condition. You're encouraging normal play and socialization. And again, routine. Utilizing behavior modifications for good habit forming. Teaching the child the benefits of eating healthy meals and regular exercise. And you are involving the school team, yearly reviews about the health plan and educational accommodations, and intermittent reviews that might include things like exception occasions, like a field trip, for instance. Okay, so in adolescence, you're going to be preparing for the child for independence in a child-centered sort of way. Ultimately, the goal is shifting decision-making from you to the child so that they can achieve self-management and become fully accountable for their own health. You're transitioning the child from pediatric care services to adult services. You're having higher education and vocational discussions. And you are having discussions about reproductive health. So for additional considerations like fertility, priapism, pregnancy risk, genetic counseling, contraceptive considerations. And very importantly, you're also going to be managing the emotional health. So one thing that you do want to do is consider supports for your child's mental health. The prevalence of anxiety and depression is much higher in the sickle cell disease, and this is because of racism in general, and also you're going to be recognizing signs for sadness, irritability, ideation of self-harm. And if there is somebody who does need help, then there are some resources for them over here. And one last thing to be aware of, actually two last things, is that you are your child's advocate. So being informed, communicating openly, knowing your baseline measurements, teaching your child to advocate for yourself, and getting involved in advocacy groups like this one are really great. And also, you are going to take care of yourself. So caring for this caregiver, as a single mom, I know it's important to find time for myself during the day so I can be more there emotionally for my child and have extra resources to take care of them as well. So in summary, learn as much as you can about the condition, take the child to doctor's appointments and specialists, make good health, food and exercise choices, learn about the triggers for stress, illness, dehydration, learn the signs of anemia, know when to get additional help, and learn about the complications, the treatment, follow your immunization schedule. We know for sickle cell disease that that's an enhanced schedule. Transfusions, research cures, maintain hope and the dreams that you have for your child because the life expectancy for sickle cell continues to extend. So that's it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Mary. I'm going to ask each of the speakers, I think 10 minutes each will kind of help us make sure we make it through the rest and have time for questions. So come on up, please. Tanya, do you need a...
Okay, this one. Okay, perfect. So thank you. Thank you first to 10 minutes. Yeah, I'll try to go through the 10 minutes. I would like to thank Esther and Danielle that helped translated my slide because I'm presenting the francophone parent perspective, and we have some francophone parents here that are unilingual. So we thought that it would be a good idea for them to have the presentation in French, and they also offered to have kind of instant translation, so thank you. Okay, so a little bit of introduction. My name is Tanya Elese, and I'm here to share my family's experience as a francophone parent, raising our 13-year-old son named Nelikia, who has been living with sickle cell disease since birth. My husband and I, Desiree, have two other kids, so we have 3 kids in total, 2 girls and a boy. As parents navigating the healthcare system, ensuring proper education, and providing emotional support are crucial tools we've relied on throughout this journey.
Donc, on alterne au fur et à mesure? C'est ça qu'on voulait faire?
Oui, si on peut le faire dans 10 minutes, c'est ça aussi le défi.
Okay, perfect. Alors, je suis Tanya Elese et je suis je vais vous parler de la famille, de mon expérience en famille en tant que parent francophone d'un fils de 13 ans qui s'appelle Elikia et qui vit avec l'anémie falciforme ou la drépanocytose.
Sorry. I'm glad my presentation is right after Mary because what I was thinking is all she has to present as a parent perspective is also what I have. But I would focus more on what, as a francophone parent in a province that is mainly English, what I faced.
Je suis très contente d'avoir été juste après Marie parce que tout ce qu'elle a décrit, c'est vraiment extraordinaire. Et moi, je vais parler de ce que moi, en tant que femme francophone, qui est la maman d'un enfant qui a l'anémie falciforme, quelle a été mon expérience.
So living in the Ottawa-Gatineau region, the francophone language and culture plays a significant role in our experience.
J'habite dans la belle région de Gatineau et être francophone, ça fait vraiment partie de notre culture et de notre expérience.
While the healthcare system primarily operates in English, our home, school, and extracurricular activities are rooted in French.
Même si notre système de santé est en anglais, à la maison, à l'école et toutes nos activités extrascolaires sont toujours en français.
This dynamic has shaped how we navigate and advocate for our son's needs.
Alors vraiment, ceci nous a permis de mettre en valeur comment nous vivons et de pouvoir être une défenseur des besoins de notre fils.
So a little bit of the journey. Elika was diagnosed with sickle cell disease at birth, thanks to the newborn screening and confirmation at about 6 weeks old.
Elika, notre fils, a été diagnostiqué à l'âge de 6 mois. Il avait 6 semaines, pardon. Ça a été confirmé son statut.
His first visit to ER occurred at just 2 months old, and subsequent visit became almost monthly due to cold trigger fevers because, yeah, go ahead.
Alors, la première visite qu'il a eue à l'urgence, c'était à 2 mois. Et par la suite, on avait des visites très fréquentes à cause de la grippe.
And because the protocol is once they have fever, we have to go to the hospital just to ensure that there's nothing.
Parce que, comme vous le savez, dès qu'un enfant a la fièvre, il faut absolument aller à l'hôpital.
So, for example, we quickly learned the importance of mentioning as we come that we're coming for sickle cell disease with fever immediately at triage to ensure prompt attention.
Alors, quand on arrive à l'hôpital, on doit tout de suite mentionner, quand on arrive au triage, que notre enfant a de la fièvre et qu'il a l'anémie falciforme pour pouvoir recevoir l'attention nécessaire.
At the time, I was not fluent in English as I am today, and you can still feel my accent, which made me anxious about attending the emergency room alone when my husband couldn't come with us.
À l'époque, je ne parlais pas aussi bien anglais comme je le parle maintenant, et ça me rendait très anxieuse quand mon mari ne pouvait pas être avec moi quand j'allais à l'urgence.
So language subtleties sometimes cause confusions. For example, the word actually in English means in fact, but in French it means currently. So sometimes I was concerned, am I using the right word? For example, recently with Mrs. Landry, I was addressing sickness because in French, la maladie stands for sickness and illness. So sometimes those subtleties was a little bit anxious as well.
Alors, les subtilités du langage sont parfois très difficiles à naviguer. Par exemple, le mot actually en anglais, ça veut dire en fait en français. Mais quand on le traduit, c'est très difficile. Et je parlais récemment à Landry, quand on dit maladie en français, c'est autrement en anglais. Donc, c'est des choses à faire attention.
And I also had to Google and then to Google translate medical terms like URI for upper respiratory infection to fully understand what they meant.
Et souvent, il fallait que j'aille sur Google pour vraiment comprendre les termes qu'on me parlait comme upper respiratory infection, une infection des voies respiratoires.
Finding francophone healthcare professionals in Ontario was a challenge. Both my husband and I, at the time we were working at the Ottawa University, and our family doctor was at the clinic there and was a unilingual Anglophone. So this meant that most of the healthcare resources available to us were in English.
À l'époque, tous nos gens qui s'occupaient de nous au niveau médical étaient des anglophones. Nous, on était des francophones. On travaillait. C'était difficile de trouver des médecins francophones. Mon mari et moi, on travaillait à l'Université d'Ottawa et notre docteur de famille parlait seulement l'anglais.
Our doctors had easy access to English language resources, but they struggled to find equivalent materials in French to share with us. This language barrier made it harder for us to fully engage.
Notre docteur pouvait trouver facilement beaucoup de documentation en anglais, mais c'était très difficile de les trouver en français et ça faisait une barrière de langage difficile à surmonter.
I quickly realized that I needed to be an even stronger advocate for my son, not only as any parent would, but especially because he couldn't fully communicate his needs in English with healthcare providers.
J'ai rapidement réalisé qu'il fallait que je sois une défenseur des besoins de mon fils parce que non seulement tous les parents font ça, mais on avait besoin de s'assurer que ses besoins étaient entendus.
While sometimes try to speak in English, I insisted that he express his experience in French. This way, I could accurately translate his words to ensure the healthcare professional understood exactly how he felt.
Malgré qu'il pouvait parfois s'exprimer en anglais, je m'assurais qu'il parlait en français pour pouvoir bien exprimer ses besoins et pour que ça soit clair pour les professionnels de la santé.
One thing as well that was helpful is because at the time it was hard to find resources in French, and usually my research was focusing on anémie falciforme. That's how the illness is called here in America. But I quickly learned that by using drépanocytose, that's how it's called elsewhere in the world, I had more resources in French.
Par exemple, ici en Amérique du Nord, on dit l'anémie falciforme, alors que partout ailleurs, c'est la drépanocytose. Donc, en utilisant ce mot pour faire mes recherches, ça m'a permis d'avoir beaucoup plus de ressources.
Elikia's, I will be talking about the education and support. Elikia's repeated absence due to pain crisis, particularly during his early school years, significantly affected his educational journey.
Je vais maintenant parler de l'éducation. Elikia avait souvent des absences répétées et donc ça a affecté au niveau de son école primaire la façon qu'il pouvait parcourir son éducation, qu'il pouvait progresser.
We had to work with the school to ensure they understood sickle cell disease and how to respond in case of a crisis. We developed and provided a cheat sheets in French outlining the essential steps for managing a crisis. So I don't know if you can see the image there. There were some faces and elements that I personally as a parent had to develop and share with the school to help.
Alors, on a développé une petite feuille sommaire pour pouvoir aider les professeurs à l'école. Qu'est-ce qu'on doit faire s'il a une crise? Et vous le voyez ici à l'écran, on avait ça pouvait nous aider vraiment pour notre fils, pour ses professeurs, pour savoir quoi faire quand il a une crise.
Also, we had to ensure that medical documentation were drafted in French, when the hospital was actually mainly producing documents in English.
Alors, quand on avait de la documentation du docteur en anglais, il fallait la traduire pour la donner en français à l'école.
Quickly, we benefited for the fact that we live in the border between Quebec and Ontario. And for example, when he had those difficulties at school wanted immediately to medicate him. But the hospital team at CHIO preferred for us to go with coping mechanism first. So that's what we went with, and it was a success.
On a la chance d'habiter sur une ville qui partage 2 provinces. Donc, par exemple, à l'école, dès que mon fils a eu des problèmes, il voulait tout de suite qu'on le médicalise avec des médicaments pour le TDAH. Et l'hôpital, notre hématologue disait non, commencez par des choses plus naturelles, fonctionnelles, stratégiques avant de le médicaliser.
Emotional and social support. So just like Marie said, learning that your child has an incurable disease like sickle cell disease, with it associated with pain and risk of organ damage is emotionally overwhelming and challenging for any parent and for the siblings as well.
Apprendre que votre enfant a une maladie incurable, c'est vraiment difficile et la douleur associée au risque, au dommage aux organes, c'est émotionnellement bouleversant.
In our African culture, there's often a taboo surrounding illness, like sickle cell disease. This combined with our desire as parents to respect that the diagnosis was our son's to disclose and not us, made it difficult to share our situation with friends and extended family. This reluctance, while well-intentioned, sometimes left us isolated and unable to receive the support we needed.
Vous savez, dans la culture africaine, c'est vraiment un tabou tout autour de l'anémie falciforme, de la drépanocytose. Alors, nous, on a toujours voulu que c'est la décision de notre fils de pouvoir dire s'il a ce diagnostic, et non pas la nôtre, pour respecter sa décision. Et ça crée parfois des difficultés, des situations avec ses amis ou la famille élargie. Alors, les gens sont souvent bien intentionnés, mais parfois, ça crée un sentiment d'isolement pour nous parce qu'on n'est pas capable d'avoir le support qu'on a besoin.
And additionally, the limited access to peer support groups in French in the region deepened the sense of isolation that we as francophone parents felt in our situation.
Et on n'avait pas de groupe support de parents francophones, alors ça a ajouté une complexité à la situation.
For a long time, I hesitated to join SCAGO's peer support, for example, mainly due to the concern I mentioned above and the language barrier.
Alors, ça m'a pris du temps à faire partie du groupe support à Chicago, à cause de tous les éléments que je vous ai décrits plus tôt.
It took nearly 8 years into our journey with sickle cell disease before I felt ready to connect with others, but once we did, it was a transformative experience helping us to break the isolation and find strength in the community.
Ça m'a pris 8 ans pour arriver à m'introduire dans le groupe de parents, de réaliser que c'était important, mais quand je l'ai fait, c'était une expérience transformatrice.
As I mentioned earlier, it's been crucial for our son Eleke to express himself in the language he feels most comfortable with, which is French. We have always been supported, especially by the specialists at the CHIO, to encourage him to speak in French. But for example, at ER, it was important for us to be there to translate when we were facing a unilingual doctor.
Alors, c'était très important pour notre fils de toujours l'encourager à parler en français quand il s'exprimait avec son docteur pour qu'il se sente beaucoup plus confortable. Et on a toujours encouragé son choix au lieu de commencer à traduire pour lui, mais on était là pour traduire aux besoins. Mais les docteurs au HIO, qui est l'hôpital des enfants, nous a toujours été très, très, très encourageants. Et on était là quand on allait à l'urgence pour pouvoir traduire pour lui.
Accessing French resources from Europe has not only deepened our understanding of sickle cell disease, but also exposed us to various management strategies used globally. For instance, we learned about the stem cell transplantation as a treatment option well before it became widely discussed in North America, and this knowledge prompted us to have those conversations with our doctors before it was something here.
En ayant accès à des recherches et de la documentation qui venait par exemple de la France en français, on a pu approfondir notre connaissance de l'anémie falciforme. Par exemple, on a su bien avant que ce soit de monnaie courante ici au Canada, le transfert des cellules souches.
Having access to bilingual resources has been an invaluable asset for our family. It ensured we were well informed and could advocate effectively for our son's care, bridging the gap between our linguistic background and the healthcare system.
Alors, avoir accès à de l'information bilingue, des ressources bilingues, c'était incroyable. C'est vraiment un atout pour notre famille afin qu'on puisse pouvoir être des défenseurs de ses besoins.
We have hope and continued advocacy. So for many years, research in sickle cell disease lagged behind other illnesses. However, recent advancements have brought new hope, particularly with the development of innovative therapies like stem cell transplantation, gene therapy. These advances are changing the landscape of sickle cell treatment and offering new possibilities for the future.
Alors, il y a de l'espoir. Et on continue à être les défenseurs de notre fils. Pendant plusieurs années, la recherche pour l'anémie falciforme a été à l'arrière. Il traînait de la patte par rapport à d'autres maladies. Mais cependant, il y a beaucoup d'avancements présentement, comme la thérapie génique, comme les transplantations de cellules souches. Alors, ça change l'horizon pour l'avenir de l'anémie falciforme et de ses traitements, et ça offre de nouvelles possibilités.
Our hope is for Eleke to live a full and accomplished life just like his siblings. Whether he chooses to pursue life in French or English, we want him to have every opportunity to succeed and thrive.
Alors, notre espoir pour notre fils Eleke, c'est de pouvoir vivre sa vie soit en français, soit en anglais, comme ses frères et sœurs, et de pouvoir avoir les mêmes opportunités pour avoir du succès et réussir.
We deeply appreciate the effort of Chicago in providing bilingual resources for the sickle cell disease community. The website is bilingual. You'll have resources in English, then you'll find in French as well.
Et nous sommes tellement reconnaissants à Chicago d'offrir toutes les ressources en français et en anglais, bilingues, pour tous ceux qui en ont besoin.
Very quickly, I will mention, even with my son, although we were sharing in French, but I've never talked about the drepanocytose with him. So one day I was reading a document with him and he asked me, what is it? I'm like, how come you don't know? Because we usually refer to him either sickle cell or anémie falciforme.
Alors, par exemple, quand je parlais à mon fils, il a vu le mot drépanocytose. Il a dit, c'est quoi ça, maman? Parce qu'il n'était jamais au courant que c'était le mot pour anémie falciforme, comme sickle cell en anglais.
We're done. So thank you for allowing me to share our journey as francophone parents navigating life with sickle cell disease.
Merci infiniment de m'avoir permis de vous présenter mon expérience en tant que parent francophone avec un enfant qui a l'anémie falciforme.
I hope our story inspires other families to overcome language barriers and find hope for the future.
Et j'espère que notre expérience va encourager d'autres familles à surmonter les barrières de langage.
Remember, there is strength in our community. You are not alone. I encourage you to reach out, to connect with peers, other families, and the resources available to you. Don't let the language be a barrier. Together, we can break through it.
Rappelez-vous, il y a vraiment une force à être tous ensemble. Et ne vous laissez pas décourager par les barrières de langage. Ensemble, on est plus fort.
Thank you.
Merci.
Well, we know translation, it takes double the time, so we needed to allow a little for that. So my colleagues coming up, I'm taking you down to like 6 to 7 minutes. Let's go, bring Bethany up next. Should I use like this mic, this one, or is it this one? Okay, perfect, okay. Can you guys all hear me? We're all good? Okay, all right, I'll be super quick. So I think Karen kind of gave a little bit of an introduction of who I am, but my name is Bethany Morris, and I am 31 years old, and I live with sickle cell disease. So growing up with sickle cell was obviously very difficult, and I was sick a lot, I missed a lot of school, and I faced many challenges. Before becoming diagnosed with sickle cell disease, I was born with collapsed kidneys, lungs, along with a ruptured bowel, and then I believe at about 3 months old, I was diagnosed with sickle cell. So growing up as a child with sickle cell disease, my days were filled with excruciating pain, hospital stays, appointments, getting accommodations for school, and just not being much of a normal child. My parents, who are over there, my parents played a major role in navigating my life as a child with sickle cell. They took me to all my appointments, and we probably much be at Sick Kids all day, probably from like a 9 to 5 type of thing. When I was admitted, they would have to coordinate their days off from their job. So one would stay like in the morning, one would stay in the evening, and they would just alternate back and forth. I was very lucky to have parents with me like at all times in the hospital. I was never by myself. I forgot to move this, but yeah, okay, hold on. Whoops. Okay, there you go. Okay. So when it came to schooling, most schools did not understand how to manage children that had sickle cell. I remember being at school a lot, and I had to go to the office because they didn't know what was wrong or what to do. My parents had to fight for me to have the access to the washroom because I went to school in the early 90s, so you couldn't really go to the washroom just on your own. So my mom had to go to the school a lot and let them know that I need to go to the washroom whenever I needed to go. I also had to stay inside a lot, so staying inside for recess because it was way too cold outside, and just trying to have like a water bottle on my desk as well because that wasn't a thing back in those days. So I also missed a lot of school as a child, and my mom also got me a tutor so I would not fall behind. So I spent a lot of evenings doing schoolwork, which is not very fun. So anyway, I went off to college and university, and handling my health and education was very difficult because my parents no longer advocated for me. I had to do it myself. Going into these institutions was actually
difficult. It was not a good time. But I managed how to balance working like part-time and in school full-time. And there were times my health did suffer, and I had to learn self-care practices and how to keep myself healthy and well. So now, as an adult with sickle cell, I do not get admitted to the hospital as much, and I manage my pain at home with medication, heat, and fluids. If I do have to go to the hospital, I'm lucky to have my dad. He will take me because his work schedule is a bit more flexible than my mom, so someone will come with me, and we kind of just stay there until like I'm ready to go. But in the end, basically, growing up as a child with sickle cell and chronic pain is still not easy. I still run into many challenges as an adult, and I'm thankful for all that has been done for me by my parents, by God, and obviously the healthcare team that has kept me here. So, yeah, thank you.
I love it. I love hearing the lived experience, right? And inspire and see where you can go and the help you need along the way, right? We all need help along the way. That's something I'm kind of hearing throughout, is how do we make sure that children are lifted to where they need to be so that they can then continue to lift themselves. Dr. Newton, I invite you to the mic, please.